Hey, if we are personal friends, you may have noticed I posted a reflection today about how some actions that we take feel very meaningful, but they don't necessarily create the kind of change that we want to see. And that's because they're compounding actions. So things like praying, meditating, being compassionate, being empathetic, understanding people, being a good listener, like those types, well, take out being a good listener. I mean understanding by that, connected. Those types of actions are compounding actions, which means when other people do them with you, there's a compounded effect that makes quite a radical difference. So when people say one person meditating can change the world or teach children to meditate and we'll have a different world in a generation, that's a compound effect. So the more you do it, the more effect it has, and also the more people doing it, the more effect it has. But when you're talking about like radical and immediate change, then we have catalytic actions. And catalytic actions meaning it causes a change, it causes a reaction and catalyzes some type of change. Those types of actions are things that are based in conviction, particularly compassionate or passionate conviction, and courage. Right? So we have courage, we have conviction, like I've chosen to do this, I'm really believe in it, I believe really strongly in it, and then we have the courage to take the action. But all of the amount of being compassionate, empathetic, praying, hoping, wishing, doing all of the mindset and like deeper emotional work, the healing work, all of that are compounding activities. They're going to get us to a place eventually over time, the more and more we do them, like building a mountain one grain at a time. One grain of sand at a time. They'll also be much more effective when we're in that relationship with other people. So you have a group of 40 people meditating, much bigger effect than one person meditating because they're compounding actions, right? Same with compassion, same with empathy, like peaceful thoughts all you want. Those are compounding actions. They're still powerful actions, but they're better when combined, right? Or over time. If you want immediate results, if you want immediate change, then we've got to turn to conviction and action based in courage, right? So action based in those two things, conviction and courage. And those two types, the actions that are inspired by those two places within you, a place of courage and a place of deep, deep, powerful conviction that goes beyond, I believe this. It's, I know this to be true. And so I am willing to take the bold levels of action that it takes to see it come forth in the world because it is true in me. Right? That level of conviction bends governments, bends time and space, right? Changes the course of history. That level of conviction is what we see in Martin Luther King, what we see in Martin Luther King Jr., what we see in Gandhi, what we see in Nelson Mandela, right? Conviction matched with courage. Those are catalytic ways of being in the world. So it doesn't matter if you apply this to relationships or you apply it to business or you apply it to social circumstances going on right now, political circumstances. It doesn't matter where you apply this. Just know that there's a difference between actions that are compounding and still powerful, but in a very on a different timeline and in a different way, versus actions that create change and a quicker pace. Because those actions take conviction, real conviction, the depth of knowing, and they take courage. So when I look back to some of the things that don't make sense that I've achieved, right? It doesn't make sense that at a very junior level in the government, I was able to start a new office in my department, that I was able to reorganize how we did work, that I was able to just do things that are sort of mind-blowing, like it doesn't make sense. But in that time and space, when that was happening, the conviction that I had was so powerful that other people were quite literally powerless to stop me. Right? And it wasn't from a place of, I need this for me, I'm going to achieve this for my own sake, I have to aggrandize myself. It came solely from the place of, this is the right thing to do for the country and for the world, and this is going to happen. And that level of belief, that knowingness of this is the right thing. Not right in a political sense, but right in the universal right sense. Like, this is just the right thing right now. that level of conviction there's no shaking in there, right? There's no, what Abraham Hicks calls the wobble in that. There's no space in there for anybody to disagree. And when you pair that with courage, the courage to keep going every day, the courage to speak out, the courage to stand up for what you think is right, the courage to try things a new way, the courage to get yourself, out of the house and stretch yourself to do new things, you're unstoppable. And not in a way that makes you aggressive or annoying or any of that, though some people may think that, but who cares, because you're rooted in a place of true passion, right? So when you're thinking about how you want to be right now in whatever area of your life is bothering you, whether that's social issues, political issues, romance, business, personal satisfaction, like, look at it, how much you have conviction and courage showing up in your life. Because it may be that you've just chosen a lot of compounding actions, like meditation, like compassion, like empathy, like these deeper emotions, these deeper ways of reacting and responding that you could also call passive, but it's not about passive versus active actions. It's about the strength with which we sort of bring the waters up underneath what we're going to do. And some actions, the compounding actions in particular, those waters rise over time. And catalytic actions bring the waters right away. So thinking about that for you, I'm trying to think of an example. I had one before I got on here, but of course, as soon as you hit live, like, your brain goes blank. I'm trying to think of one that it was a great example in relationships. I think maybe it was about boundaries. Like, there are many of us who in relationships want to talk about how we want to be treated. And so we do all this research on learning about the other gender that we're interacting with, or learning about the types of people that we're interacting with, and relationship dynamics, and how to get the way you want, and how to be clear. And we learn communication techniques. Like, we learn all these tools that are based in understanding, empathy, compassion, self-knowing, right? But what we tend to shy away from are the conviction and the courage tools, which are to draw very clear boundaries and say, this is how it's going to be for me. This is what I know is true. And that's a really bold step, but that bold step gets results. That bold step gets immediate change in your relationships and how people treat you, right? So I'm going to leave it at that, because we could apply this to any number of areas, particularly with the political climate going on in the world. But just think about that. Compounding actions are still powerful. I'm not undermining them. I teach meditation, for God's sake. Like, compounding actions are incredibly powerful, but they are not alone in a universe of actions and options. Because the actions that are going to create very, very, very powerful, instant change are the catalytic actions, things that are based in conviction and courage. So looking at your life, looking at the balance that you've got going on, and seeing where you could perhaps make some tweaks. Perhaps you need to bring up more of that real firm belief, is this is what I know is true. This is how it's going to be. Yep. And then having the courage to take the action that comes to you in an inspired space of passionate conviction. Because when we're in that space, there's no question. It's not like, I had a client last night say, oh, well, I don't know if I could go and talk about this idea that I have because, maybe I just feel like I'm not really qualified. And I was like, when you talk about that issue, it's so clear that you are intellectually engaged, you are emotionally engaged, you are physically engaged, you are there, you believe it to your core. And it's those types of things that then we pair them with the courage to do something, speak out, go out, talk to people, take a stand, draw a boundary, write a piece, create a piece of art, like those types of things. Then you create real, instant change. So think about how those two things pair up for you and where you might balance them out, create more catalytic action in your life if you want to see some bigger change. Mwah!